Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm back with something a little different. A seasonal special, if you like. Something a little bit different from the conventional reviews that I do here on the channel. It's actually something that I did a couple of years back in the very early days of No Nonsense Metal Reviews being a YouTube channel. But it's essentially a celebration and recognition of this wonderful transitional season, this magical time of year, autumn or fall, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on, which side of the pond you happen to reside. But autumn is upon us, and it is a favourite season of mine. I love these transitional seasons where summer is very much, certainly here in England, very much on the way out now. It is very wet, it is very miserable. In fact, I think we've had record rainfall in the last couple of days, which is saying something for England, as we are generally a bit wet and damp over here. That said, there are certain nice things about it. About autumn, there are some lovely crisp days that are perfect for stomping across the fields and through the woods and out in the wild. It's also a good time to dig out the hoodies, which, interestingly enough, on a complete random side note, delving into my hoodies selection, I realised that I now have accumulated somehow 8 different hoodies, and I probably will end up getting more because there's always awesome hoodies about, and hoodies are just so functional. But do I really need 8 hoodies? Do we as metalheads really need that much merch? Of course we do, absolutely. But back to autumn. Autumn brings certain albums to mind. For me, for every metalhead, I'm sure, there's certain albums or bands, songs even, that we might associate with this magical, mystical time of year, this very important season. Certainly if you're a person who celebrates and acknowledges the pagan festivals and pagan calendar, of course, we've just had the equinox, we're transitioning into autumn. There's much music that we can associate with this time of year. So what I've done here is assembled a small selection of albums that I personally feel provide an excellent soundtrack to your fall or autumn. Albums that I feel are the good soundtrack choices, if you like, to your autumnal walks through the woods or your autumnal evenings. Some evenings you get fantastic sunsets where obviously the nights are getting longer, the evenings are drawing in, you get some of those stunning sunsets. And these albums will provide you with a perfect soundtrack to those magical moments. So, first of all, we're going to kick off to the band that I decided to add to this list most recently. And actually we're going to go with Norwegian, now progressive metal legends, Enslaved. So Enslaved, very interesting band. I got into them in a very big way, maybe around 2 years ago, and I've been loving their stuff ever since. I particularly enjoy their earlier albums, and interestingly, Heimdall, their most recent album from 2023, was my favourite album of last year. But there's so many of their albums that I feel provide a fantastic soundtrack to this time of year. There's also some albums that are, without a doubt, a fantastic winter listen. You know, a winter album, such as an album like Frost, their second album, I believe it was. Perfect for winter, but certain albums, like this album I held up first from 2012, probably going to mispronounce this, but this is sort of Runes, Ritir or Ritir, not really sure. This is a great album. This is a great soundtrack of progressive metal, still rooted in black metal and the kind of Viking metal influence there, but it's got some really great tracks that are perfect, and I've done it myself, perfect for listening to when you're out across the fields, stomping through the wilderness and being subject to the elements. It's got some really great tracks for that. Certainly tracks like Death in the Eyes of Dawn, the second track there. Not to neglect the rather brilliant opening track, Thoughts Like Hammers. But if we're sticking for particularly autumnal tracks, and of course this is entirely based on my opinion, you might think, whoa, that's rubbish. That's a spring song if ever I did hear it. Who cares? But Death in the Eyes of Dawn is a great one, as is Roots of the Mountain, which is a very epic track. That is a perfect soundtrack to getting out, stomping over the fields, through the woods. The title track, Ritter, the very stunning Matterall is brilliant, and the closing epic, Forsaken. Absolutely brilliant. So this one's a stunning soundtrack to your autumn, but I was very torn between that album and its follow-up, 2015's In Times. This is probably my preferred album out of those two anyway. This is a fantastic album, and it's really grown on me in the last sort of year or so. Haven't come back to it as often as it probably deserves, but Turisaz Dreaming, Building with Fire, 1000 Years of Rain, which is very fitting for the fact that it's actually peeing down outside as we speak. Well, I say peeing down. It was peeing down earlier. Now it's more of just a pathetic drizzle that I'm looking at outside. Had to dig out the hoodies, as I say, and I've got the lighting on, and autumn in England, hey. But a very fitting track. North Ear, Bleeding, In Times, Daylight. This is actually it's a heavy album. I'd say it's a very heavy album, but it's epic. It's got that very epic kind of Viking metal vibe as well from the earlier years. This is a great one, and this is a perfect album if you're feeling like maybe being a bit brooding and looking out across the wilderness there. In Times, a stunning album, and Enslaved, just such a great band, absolutely brilliant. And of course, I have to still mention the amazing Heimdall. Although this, personally, I feel this is going to be a late autumn album. This is going to be a late autumn recommendation for where we're starting to edge our way into winter more than early autumn. But again, it's got that stunning sound, very progressive, but still heavy, still rooted in the early kind of more extreme black metal sound there. But the references to nature, the natural world, and to that sort of very fitting subject matter for this time of year is perfect. Absolutely perfect. But if I know I'm cheating here by picking multiple albums from these bands, but I'd say that the real autumnal go-to for me is going to be In Times here. Certainly for when you're out on those autumnal stomps. Next up, for when you're feeling dark and brooding and maybe a little bit melancholic and melodramatic, probably going to want to reach for Sweden's doomy, I don't even know what they would be classed as, whether it's doom, gothic doom, I don't know. I'm going to say they're a bit of a mix of everything, but Katatonia, a fantastic band, and this album, Dead End Kings, from, was it 2012, beg your pardon, 2012's Dead End Kings. This, for me, I am not ashamed to say, is my absolute go-to Katatonia album. I love this album. This is the perfect album for when you are feeling a little bit more on the kind of emotional side, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you're just a bit more in tune with your feelings. I don't know. But this is a great album anyway. This is actually quite a heavy album for Katatonia. So heavy, in fact, that if I remember correctly, they were a little bit, as a band, they were a little bit unhappy with how heavy it was and decided to do the dethroned and uncrowned kind of acoustic renditions of these tracks in this album. But Dead End Kings is a fantastic album, and I personally have a lot of association with this album in autumn, in sort of September, October time from years gone by, and I'll spare you the stories there. But a lot of hours was spent listening to this album and being out looking at the autumnal evenings and night skies and walking through the woods and so on and so forth. But it's got some cracking tracks that are perfect for that kind of situation. The Parting, the One You Were Looking For Is Not Here, The Racing Heart, stunning. Leech, Buildings, and probably the best track on this album, Lethian, but also Dead Letters. Absolutely amazing. This is truly heartfelt stuff, amazing vocals, killer riffs, really great guitar work and leads. You know, it's got that good mixture of kind of quite doomy, well, maybe not even doomy, but certainly metal riffs. You know, it's got a heaviness to it. There's no passing that off as rock music. It's heavy, but it's got atmosphere. It's got ambience that just works so wonderfully at this deep time of year. So, Dead End Kings by Katatonia, amazing stuff. I can't remember if any of these albums did feature in the version of, albums and soundtracks for autumn that I did however many years ago it was now. I deliberately didn't revisit that because I didn't want to influence myself with my own recommendations, but at the same time, kind of wanted to see, am I still picking the same albums? Or are they entirely new? So, keeping with a more of a deep sound, more of an emotive sound perhaps, we can't talk about deep, heavy, melancholic music without talking about the mighty My Dying Bride from here in the UK, in fact. And this album that I have chosen, there's so many contenders from My Dying Bride's catalogue that I feel would personally really fit a great soundtrack for this time of year. But I've decided to go with 2020's The Ghost of Orion. Simply because although this is a deep, very emotive album, it's not as deep, it's not as depressive as some of their other albums. There were a few albums from their earlier catalogue that I was toying with, and I was very tempted to include A Map of All Our Failures, but again, reminds me a bit too much of Winter. Similar story with Feel the Misery. Similar kind of vibe with the most recent one, Immortal Binding. But this album, The Ghost of Orion, although it's deep, it's doomy, it's dark, there's a little bit about it that's almost uplifting in its depth, if that makes sense. It's certainly one you'd have to hear it to really understand what I'm jabbering on about, but it kicks off with the excellent Your Broken Shore, which is just fantastic. And it's perfect combination of heaviness, emotive, passionate. It's brilliant. It's stunning. Aaron Stainthorpe's vocals just work so well. The whole band are fantastic. I love the clarity of the music. The production here is just excellent. I can't even remember off the top of my head who produced it. So it's produced, engineered, mixed and mastered by Mark Minot. A name I'm not familiar with, but it's just amazing. Then we get some other incredible tracks as well that just work so well at this time of year, absolutely. So we've got To Outlive the Gods, which is killer. Tired of Tears. The Solace, which is it's just stunning, absolutely beautiful stuff. And this is essential for your autumnal strides or autumnal evening and nights, gazing at the stars. Wow, just perfect stuff. Tired of Tears, in fact, is a bit of an album highlight for me. As is The Long Black Land, which is crushing and extremely good. It's an epic, longer track, just like The Old Earth. Totally mesmerizing stuff. Totally perfect soundtrack for this time of year. Absolutely love it. In fact, I listened to this again in full a few evenings ago. I just couldn't help myself but have my eyes closed and just be transcending into this deep, deep space. And I freaking love it. My Dying Bride are such a powerful, poignant band. Absolutely love them. And again, they really do provide some amazing, genuinely amazing music that works so well in autumn. So, up next, we've kind of gone through an interesting mix of progressive black metal through to a bit of doom. Now we're gonna go outright kind of gothic, and two albums came to mind, or quite frequently come to mind when I think about autumn essential albums. Two albums from one of my favourite bands that are both very, I'd say, gothic and melodic in nature. I'm talking Rotting Christ with their fourth album from, was this 1997? Yep, A Dead Poem, which is a heavy album, very melodic, as I say, but the first very gothic album that they produced. And the follow-up from 1999, try and actually show off the artwork there, Sleep of the Angels, which is an interesting album because I think it would still be the case, but for a long time I've regarded this album as a great album. It's very good, and it is very good, but still my least favourite Rotting Christ album. And that provoked some interesting responses when I did the album ranking of Rotting Christ, because I know that some metalheads out there, some Rotting Christ fans, think that this is some of Rotting Christ's best work. And that's totally cool. Totally fine. Your opinion is just as valid as mine, of course. I've just always just felt that this was the least Rotting Christ album. Not to disrespect the band at all, it's still a very good album. And some tracks, like the opening track, Cold Colours, I feel, After Dark I Feel, The World Made End, the title track, The Sleep of the Angels, and Thine is the Kingdom. Perfect melodic, weighty metal that works really well with this kind of, even the colours of this time of year. You look at that, I'm seeing a lot of brown, I'm seeing some yellow and orange going on in there. It just really works. But it's got that kind of gothic vibe to it. It's a bit of a brooding album, and it's a good soundtrack. That said, it's not quite as fitting or as good, in my opinion, as A Dead Poem. If I had to choose just one between these two albums, it would of course be A Dead Poem, and I personally rate this album really quite highly. It's a solid album. Very gothic, very melodic. There's a lot going on there. It's certainly heavier than the Sleep of the Angels, but it's stunning. It's absolutely freaking stunning. Start to finish, this is just packed with perfect, deep, but it's still heavy tracks. Again, it's a little bit melodic at times. Well, it's quite melodic at times. A little bit kind of melancholic, I should say. But I mean, even looking at the artwork there, that's a very gothic album cover. But as I say, it satisfies the need for heaviness as well. Kicking off with Sorrowful Farewell, which has a really, really thrashing riff, actually. And it sees Sarkis Tollis on fine form. Such an excellent songwriter, fantastic guitarist, criminally underrated. I could just praise Rotting Christ all day long, but keeping it relevant to autumn or the autumnal sounding tracks, Among Two Storms, stunning. You can almost smell the autumn in that track. Maybe that's just me and my strangeness, but in fact that's a lovely thing about autumn I haven't mentioned. The smell, the lovely smell of autumn. I love it. Those fresh, crisp mornings. Lovely. Anyway, A Dead Poem, title track, brilliant. Out of Spirits. Full Colour is the Night, and that's another thing about this time of year. I love having the longer days and more light for the sitting outside or enjoying a bit more of the evening in summer, but I do enjoy seeing more of the night sky. It really resonates far more being able to see the stars and the moon. Fantastic stuff. Semigod, an album highlight, maybe less autumnal, but certainly it's going to satisfy your need for heaviness. The need for heaviness never deteriorates. 10 Miles High, Between Times, and Ire Incensus. Absolutely killer album, start to finish. It's got depth, it's got magic, it's got heaviness, it's got melodicism. It's just a great album. But for me, because of listening to it at this time of year, of course, I'm going to associate it with this time of year. And I stand by my decision that this is a perfect autumnal album. And I love the cover. So then we've got one more band, which is probably the most autumnal due to their amazing album covers and genuinely stunning artwork, but the most fitting for this season. And again, probably because for so many autumns I have been listening to this band and really soaking up these albums, and of course have that association myself. But I think it would be fairly difficult to argue the credibility, certainly when you see these artworks of this band and their music being absolutely perfect for this time of year. We are talking Winter Filleth, black metal royalty that they are, in my opinion, certainly. From here in the UK, from up north, in fact. You just look at that album cover. So this is The Threnody of Triumph. Remind myself of the year 2012. Just look at that album cover. That's amazing. Absolutely stunning. And in fact, that looks just perfectly autumnal. Now, Winter Filleth are black metal bands with so much more going on there. A lot of reference to historical topics, the natural world, lore and tradition. Amazing. Absolutely fantastic. Lyrically and thematically, it's stunning. The music is absolutely incredible. This was actually the first Winter Filleth album that I heard, and it was shortly after the time of release, maybe around 2013. I first got into Winter Filleth, and it was through this album, The Ghost of Mercia. Trying to think where I then jumped to. I don't think it was the Divinity of Antiquity. I think there was I think I missed that album for reasons unknown. But certainly some of their more latter albums I've absolutely loved as well. And it's so emotive. Winter Filleth's music is so captivating and emotive and powerful. I absolutely love it. And I'm waiting to get hold of a copy of their new album. They've just had a new album come out. I'm not actually sure the title of it now. It's just completely escaped my mind, but the initial responses that I've seen online have been very good. The album cover is amazing, and it's certainly a very winter-themed album. Looking at that album cover there with the snow-capped peaks. But this album is amazing. The Threnody of Triumph, I have spent, as I say, many an autumnal stroll, many an hour absorbing this music. The title track, not the title track. The title track is actually the closing track, and that is a stunning one. But it's the opening track, A Thousand Winters, leading seamlessly into the Svart Raven, which is just absolutely glorious. Some amazing melodic black metal riffs, very sort of spectral, haunting, but gentle vocals. I say haunting, maybe haunting isn't the word. Gentle, captivating vocals. It provides a perfect atmosphere in the background there. The drumming is constant. It's melodic though, and it really does. It drives on. It's uplifting. It's probably some of the most uplifting music that I have chosen out of all of these autumnal choices here. They've got a Memorial A Memorial, I should say, amazing. The Glorious Plain. Void of Light is another stunning one that leads very nicely into the fate of souls after death. Home is Beyond, and then that title track. Absolutely love this album. It could very well be my favourite Winter Filleth album if it wasn't for another couple of albums. Certainly this next choice, which I could not overlook as being an amazing autumnal choice. This is The Dark Hereafter from 2016. So this was 2 albums later. I love that album cover. I absolutely love that. Amazing. But this is an interesting album. So it's actually 5 tracks long, 4 original tracks, and an Ulva or Yulva cover of Led Astray in the Forest Dark, which is perfect and it's absolutely stunning. Winter Filleth do that gem total justice. Amazing stuff. But it's the other tracks. The Dark Hereafter is just glorious. The Pariah's Path is amazing. It's just such emotive, energetic, spiritual music. This Winter Filleth, they make that transition from black metal into spiritual black metal. Spiritual music. Totally captivating. You just transcend in that moment. Ensigns of Victory is brilliant, but my favourite track is Green Cathedral. I think it's about 13 minutes long, and it's just epic. It's absolutely freaking stunning. I love it, start to finish. Amazing stuff. And again, it's perfect autumnal music. Just look at that artwork. The whole package is covered in glorious artwork, and I think there's some more really... Well, there's interesting thematics throughout. A little booklet as well. Amazing. An amazing album. And again, perfect soundtrack to your autumn. So there you have it. Just a bit of fun, but some recommendations. If you're looking for something to listen to that's fitting with the season, then these are the albums that I recommend to you. You might be familiar with some of these bands or albums already. You might disagree with some of these as choices, and that's fine, but let's keep this civilized. It's all a bit of fun, and it's all opinion-based. And also, I'm interested to hear, what are your choices? What are the albums that you go to as being your soundtrack to your autumn or your fall? What albums do you reach for at this wonderful time of year, this very transitional season? Let me hear your choices, and let me hear what you think of these choices. Let me hear what you think about these albums and these bands. If you haven't heard any of these, I really would implore you to check them out, because they are all great albums in their own right, but they're also really good for this time of year. Really worth a listen. But thank you for joining me today. Thank you for watching. Please do feel free to like, subscribe, share. The support, the ongoing support, is really very much appreciated. We're steadily growing here on No Nonsense Metal Reviews, generating a humble following, and I'm very grateful for that. I really do enjoy this. It's all just good fun. But thanks again for the support. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, stay heavy.